Hello. Hey, I told you guys that I was going to send you videos about the stuff that I wasn't able to cover during our workshop. And so that's what this is all about. Um, Let me see. So the last thing we talked about was the shoulds. So I wanted to go into prioritizing. So I read in this book, it's called The Science of Getting Rich. And it's like a pretty old school book, like before like The Secret and all that kind of stuff. It's like way before that. So it was before, it's like pretty dry type of reading, but it has a lot of good information if you want to check it out. But part of it said, it is really not the number of things you do, but the efficiency of each separate action that counts. And I really, really liked that. That people get so attached to like, I'm so busy and I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And that's like their badge of honor, right? Is how busy they are. But that doesn't really matter if you're like half-assing a million things. Wouldn't you rather like be all in on a couple things than like half-assing 20? Like, so which one do you actually feel more productive in? Which one actually makes you feel more powerful? And like, which one would actually be easier? Really, it's like a lot less to keep track of if I'm just all in on a handful of things, right? So it's not the number of things you do, but the efficiency of each separate action. So I really love that. So I wanted you to revisit your life wheel. So if you still have that, if you could look at that, or if you just can think in your mind, and just think if there's a category in your life that's missing. Like, I know we talked about, like, you just threw spirituality into one of the sections, like self-improvement, but if it doesn't need to have its own category, like, do you need to add it to be its own category, or is there something else completely like that you need to add as a category for yourself that's really important to you? And I sit on one of these stability balls, so that might be happening because it's good for my back and it's more fun. Okay, so revisit that. See if there's any categories that you feel like are missing, and then rate yourself there. Whether it might be like missing because you want to have something up there in that like 9 area, which is awesome. It's like adding things onto your list of things to do you've already done, so you can cross it off. Or it might be something that you're like, this is really lacking, and I need to draw attention to it, and that's why it needs to be its own category, right? Okay, so then I just want you to look at looking at the wheel, like what's working really well. What here is working really, really well in my life? What is awesome? Like, for me, I feel like my relationship with Jimmy is so awesome, right? So that's part of my life that's going really well. Always there's room for improvement, of course, but it's like once you get there, you're like, oh, and then you're happy, really, but there is room for improvement because I'm not perfect and he's not perfect, and so there's always room for improvement, even though we love each other so much. So what is going really, really well? And then think about, like, how do you make that happen? So when I think about my relationship with Jimmy, I'm like, okay, how did I bring this, like, magnificent person into my life? Like, how did this happen for me? So, like, I didn't waste time on average. If I went out with somebody in their average, I was peace out, I'm over you, right? We can be friends, but I don't really want average friends either, right? So if I've got like a glimmer of some like unkindness, I was like, no, this is not for me, thank you. And I just didn't waste my time on it at all. I didn't spend any time there at all. I was immediately like, I'd rather be by myself, right? I'd rather not be doing anything than be with somebody that I feel like is going to drag me down. So that's something I did. I also felt like I really had a focus of the things that I really wanted. And I wasn't attached to like how that looked and the details of it, but I was just like, I want someone who's kind. I want somebody who's, I think we talked about this a little bit because people were like, thought my expectation was like, you're never going to find it. And it felt so simple to me, right? But it was like a handful of things, like maybe 5 or 6 things. And if someone came to my life and they weren't, like, they're not one of, it's only 6 things. I can't remember how many things it was, but it's only 6 things. If they can't be all, they don't have to be perfect in all of these things, but if can't even be kind to like the waiter at a restaurant, then like, why? Who cares? Just be nice. If kindness isn't part of you, then I don't want to have any part of that, right? So, then look at that and then be like, okay, well, how can I apply this to other areas of my life? So I've been able to take that and be like, how can I apply this to other areas of my life? This is where some of my convenient, my talk about like convenient versus easy, it's not the same thing, comes in for me. Is it would have been convenient for me to date some of these other people because they were just there and they were around, right? I did not make myself convenient to Jimmy at all. Like, I did not make that an easy process, and I was really like pushing him away and trying to repel him, right? So it wasn't convenient, but in the long run, it has become what is easy. And he does, like, we make each other's lives easier, and then we work together. And when it's work we want to do because we want it to be easier, and have this ease in our relationship, right? So it's worth like the investment of time right now, or the conversation now, so that it can progress and move from there. So how do I apply that in other areas of my life, right? So with my business, I started being like, okay, so I just work for these other people, and that feels really average to me, and it feels like disempowering, and I feel like I'm like pushing my hardest and working my hardest to push somebody else's values and agenda that didn't really necessarily match mine. And I didn't feel like the values that they preached were actually practiced, and I felt really uncomfortable with that. And that felt like a really average version of life for me. And so that was a motivation to start my own business, was because I didn't want to waste my time in the average anymore. So with jobs and stuff like that, you need income. So it's like I could not be in a relationship and never be in a relationship and still be a functioning human being, right? So with that, it's like, it's kind of like an incremental upgrade where you have to like be like, okay, I'm gonna take a step towards that, and then another step towards that, and a step towards that, rather than just like all or nothing. But that is a good motivation for me to be like, okay, I don't waste my time on average. And so that can also be, as I get clients, sometimes clients are just not a good fit, right? And since I don't waste my time on average, and I don't want them to waste their time with me because I'm not going to be their ideal coach, then they can hire a coach that's going to work best with them, and that saves the room for me to have somebody come in that's ideal for me. Because if I'm dating somebody else and then Jimmy comes in, I'm dating somebody else. There's no room for him in my life, right? So that's how I was thinking of that, that type of a thing. Or you find out like maybe that that's not ideal for this situation, but I could help them in another situation that it could be ideal, you know? So kind of shift it to where it actually fits rather than forcing it to fit. How else? That's really where my convenience thing comes in. Like with a lot of things in life, like, yeah, it might be more convenient for me to work for someone else, but it's not what's easiest in the long run. I'm trying to think. I thought of one the other day and I was like, oh, that's a good one. What was it? Oh, like even with my house, like with it's like convenient for me to walk in the house and just like drop things, right? But that's not what's easier in the long run. It's easier if I just put everything away the first time, because then I just away and it's gone. I don't have to look at it anymore, right? So what was convenient at one time was not easiest in the long run. And that's something I learned from that basic, like, how can I make more parts of my life like my relationship with Jimmy? So what is that for you? Like, what parts of your life are going really, really awesome? Like if you feel like you are really awesome at making time to have fun with people, then be like, okay, well, how do I make that happen? What are the things that I do that makes that a priority, that makes that happen for me? And how can I apply that to other areas of my life? So I hope that makes sense. And please send me any questions or emails, or we can schedule a phone call to talk if it's not making sense to you, or if you just need some help getting to the other side, okay? So then another thing I want to do is like, you guys were thinking on your 3 intentions for life. So then I want you to revisit those.